My story is a little bit different. I contacted Oliver maybe 3 weeks ago because my wife stumbled on his work about Chinese grapes, and I had told my wife that that was my interest in the bigger context of what I want to do. And this sort of covers it. And I think along the way you will understand what's going on. A tale of life and death. I'm not an academic. And in the next few slides I'll show you roughly the path that led to where I am now. For those with faint stomachs. The next slide is very relevant in a way, but it's also very different. This is how I started studying medicine, and since we're all dealing with tombs, this is what goes into the tomb. So I was 20 at the time, and I studied medicine. And this is one of the things that you do. I didn't pursue that. From here, I studied medicine for 4 years. I pursued artistic road, which ultimately led to design. I'm an industrial designer by trade, and I've done several different things, and I'm still doing stuff. Electronics, really big variety. Been doing it for 25 years, and from very simple products to complicated products. Electronics, integrating. This is the most complex product. This was actually a company that we set up ourselves here in Taiwan. I lived in Taiwan for 7 years. Starting in 1998 until 2005, roughly. The company was in Nehu, and we developed this with FIC. It is basically a tablet computer, iPad, I think 10 years before the iPad. It was a very professional product. It was used in space. International Space Station, run by NASA. They had this product as there it is, as the interface for the physical training program for astronauts. They had 2 stations. One was for a treadmill, and another was for a workout station. And I later found out, because I sold the company in 2005, that NASA actually used this until last year. May, which is quite amazing. Normally a product doesn't last that long. So as an industrial designer, you know a lot about 3D modeling and all the stuff that goes with that. Actually, in design you start with nothing and then you build it up, which is the opposite of what your work has been. But it's very familiar. So you do the 3D modeling, or you do a 3D scanning, and you do printing or whatever. We're involved in human factors, interface, UI, UX, all kind of technologies, Internet of Things, which is very popular and upcoming now, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, QR, web-based applications, smartphone. And we're in business. So there's innovation going on. We have to be business-minded. We're setting up companies. We're looking for product-market combinations, the whole thing. I've been raising funds for instance, that company that needed a lot of money. And as a startup, you have to do everything with nothing, basically. And it's all about product development. But what does that have to do with today? The next few slides will give you a hint. This is me. These are my nurses, just born. Life and death, right? So this is my family. My mother, my sister, my brother, everything fine. Dutch family, nothing special. So kids, where I grew up, Dutch, right? So wooden shoes, the whole thing. Alright, so this is my family, my grandparents, my uncles, aunts. There's one person missing, that's my dad. And this is my dad. So, guess what? He's Chinese. And I didn't really know. I didn't really understand growing up. I just had a dad like everybody else, right? And so here it is. Looks Chinese, westernized Chinese, right? So here are my parents together. Different kind of pictures. So what happened? What went wrong? Now, I grew up as a Dutch kid, totally separated from the Chinese side. My father's Chinese. But at the beginning of their marriage, there was a big bang with the parents because my Chinese grandparents, they were completely opposed. So there was a big issue. Why? Okay, they were from Indonesia. This is my grandfather. My grandmother with her favorite son. And here's my father and his sister. Growing up, Indonesia, Chinese, some Chinese went to school with Dutch children, with my dad. And, but it was family life. And life and death. This is what happened back in the 30s in Semarang. My dad trying to kill the photographer. He was actually intrigued by the whole thing of war because this was Japanese occupation and the neighbor's house was occupied by soldiers. So I think he talked one soldier into lending his gun. Now, my grandparents, and this is just before the whole family embarked on the trip, immigrated to Holland, just after the Second World War. And here they are. Integrated, right? Perfect model. We wish that all Muslims in Europe look like this. Not in modern day, right? So, the favorites of my grandmother, my grandmother, my aunt, who went later to Djie. Family. My father was a bit of a dandy. This was in London. Grandparents in Geneva, Paris. All right. So, the point was, there was a big problem. I've been out of the Chinese side, and I was, let's say, 14 or 13, 12, 13, and we had Kung Fu series on TV, which was a great series and made Chinese very popular. Then all of a sudden I saw, hey, my father is a bit similar to that. And so, obviously, he asked questions, and he actually studied a bit of Kung Fu. And when I was 14, we went on a trip to Asia. This is us. Hong Kong looked a little bit different at the time. We even went to Taiwan. This is us. And there, it turned out that my father could actually read and write some Chinese. And this was our family name. It was on a traffic sign in Japan. So the coolest thing, right? Here you are, a kid from Holland, and all of a sudden you have a Chinese name. I thought it was totally cool. Now we make a little jump. My father, when I was 14 here. My father got cancer in 1921, when I was 21, and he passed away a year later. But in that year, actually, the connection with the Chinese family re-established. And that his passing away opened up the door for me to take contact with the Chinese relatives. And that happened on a huge scale, because a year after his passing, we organized a reunion, and all of a sudden, we had a lot of relatives. When I grew up, I thought I was the only Djie. Turned out there were many, many, many. And so this was the first reunion that we organized, and later it would be many. So, no, it's not this thing is not a hobby, but I was sort of looking for, you say, the roots. I was really looking for my dad. He never mentioned anything, because that was, as I mentioned, a taboo. About his background, his youth, and, you know, as a son you want to know. So here I went to Indonesia. I was 24 at the time. And there's this whole story about the family in East Java, and there were all these graves and relatives with names I couldn't pronounce, let alone remember. So this was apparently an important person in our family. I had no clue. And I had a good camera, so I started making pictures of everything that I could see. And this was an old picture of when this grave was just set up. And that must have been in 1923 or 24. And this is a picture of the, you guys can probably read this. This is like the burial organization, right? Somebody told me? Yeah, so I was told that this was a ceremony for commemorate somebody's passing. So this is my great-grandmother, because in that grave was my great-grandfather. Here's another picture. This is all in Kediri, East Java. So many pictures of that graveyard, which you must be interested in, I think, but maybe from a different angle. Also a picture from when I guess it was just set up. And these pictures were all in the ancestral home that is still there. I have a picture of that as well. Later I took a picture. This is my great-grandmother's grave, tombstone, when in the background my great-grandfather. It's like a romantic picture, right? But the graves are separated because there were 4 wives. This is our ancestral home. It's still there, but I just got news that there's a big hole in the roof, so it's a problem. And we have this altar with tablets. This is how it looks from the front. And these tablets. So this picture is from 1986 when I was there for the first time. And I had no clue what I was looking at, really, but I knew I had to record this stuff, and as much as possible, because you never know what happens. And so in and out, and I have a lot. I just show you this. And then on the side, on the walls, there are all kind of pictures that I also took pictures of. Indonesia is super humid, so you can see how these pictures are weathered. And this, I found out later, was like just 75 years ago. This picture. But these pictures actually helped us find back the ancestral home in China, because that's written on the side. So here you have the tablet. And there's this thing, you call it the Li Quan? Qiguan. So it's on the graves. It's on this thing, on the Paiwei, on the altar. And for us, it was like we had no clue. And our house is called Rumah Kepok. Rumah is house in Malay, and Kepok we had no idea. So we were always fantasizing it must be something very spiritual and stuff. Until we found out much later. Kepok. Kepok. Yeah. So. And how we found out was when we went to China. But I continued my trip in 1986, because first I traveled in Indonesia for 6 months. 6 months to visit all the relatives. And there were many, because as I said, there were 4 wives, so there were many uncles and aunts, and then my grandmother also had like 12 brothers and sisters. And normal Chinese people try to avoid that, but I was not normal. I had a hunger for family. So I went to Beijing, where my grandmother lived, and I had never met her, and it was very special because she hadn't seen her son. There was a big issue with her son, right? She was been fighting. She was 70 something at the time, and she would like get mixed up that I was her son and stuff like that. It was actually very beautiful. And here's my aunt and her son. And I was just in time because half a year later, living in death, my grandmother passed away. So I was just in time. And I traveled to Beijing with my uncle. And that's me in Beijing. Now, one of the reasons why my grandparents didn't want my dad to get married to a Dutch girl, besides the fact that she was just a daughter of a teacher, was that the offspring would be fish nor fall, like neither Chinese nor Western, would be confused, would be discriminated against for both ends. So this whole study is also a little bit about identity, and it really is. Even though when I look in the mirror, I just see a Dutch guy, there's something more to the story. So yesterday I mentioned that my father was Chinese, and he said, "No." You said, "No, he's not Chinese. Doesn't look Chinese." So I looked up what Chinese actually is, and Google translated. Of course, it's Zhongwen, but somewhere it says Chinese, ethnic Chinese, Chinaman. Okay, Chinaman. People said that my father was a Chinaman, so that was sort of correct. And then, overseas Chinese, right? Or somebody of Chinese descent. This is a topic in Taiwan also, right? So I would be somebody of Chinese descent, even though Chinese would not recognize me as, because I don't look it, right? But, so I'm half Chinese. What do you think this guy is? Is he Belanda, a Dutch guy, or Chinese, or what is he?
We don't know until he speaks.
Until he speaks. Because if he speaks Chinese, then...
And many other things. I mean,
because most of you speak Chinese, but you don't look Chinese. And I would say that you're Chinese.
I cannot judge from the picture, it's not just a matter of looking like identity.
Okay, and then Chinese people, what do you think? Or why?
Chinese characters in the background.
I think we don't know until he says it himself, because he's the only one who is able to say who he is. We can't decide for him.
All right.
It's identity.
But okay, but in reality we all do, right? This is a political correct...
yeah, because it's the difference between identification
I would
and
just have to look at
identity.
his papers,
Okay. Well, what would happen to him if he walks on the streets in Taiwan or in Beijing? Let me ask like this. Maybe that's a different way. Will people think, oh, he's one of us, or you think, hey, what's this white girl doing?
They probably wouldn't notice him.
But they wouldn't notice. Okay, that's probably a good answer. So this is his dad. Is he Chinese? No, he's from the south of Holland for like 100 generations. This is his mom, and she's my niece, my cousin. So he's like me, half Chinese. So the point is, identity is, you guys are all politically correct. You say, well, he has to say himself, this and that. But in the streets of Beijing, they would make a decision, right? And they would make a different decision for him than for me. So it's very superficial. It's like how you look and how your genes worked out is what your identity is from the outside. Of course, you have an identity from the inside. So this whole identity thing is is going to be an issue because more and more people are intermarrying. They're going to the US, even though they stay Chinese, this and that. It's relevant. And this is what my project is about, where I get in a little bit. This is me and my wife, the day that we married, which is not too far from here. This is our family. And okay, jump. We're visiting my aunt. Remember the aunt with next to my other when she was small? That's her. She's now 80 something and still living in Beijing. In 2004, we visited China for the first time for a project. As I mentioned, I'm a designer, but I'm always working with factories. So I'm sourcing factories. I'm doing projects to get my designs or their products manufactured. But I always try to combine things. So if I go to China, I'm not just going to China to look for a factory. I do other stuff. I look for. So that trip we went to Xiamen because we knew that we were from Xiamen, and we had this information from that other picture that I showed in East Java. And this is where we're from. This is where this dot is. So this is like a half an hour drive now. Go over the bridge. It's very convenient. But at the time we had to take a boat and then a scooter. And here you see a little bit more of the village. Because what happened in 2004 we went there on a trip. And in 2005 we moved to Xiamen. And we went to the village like several times per year. And we were sort of integrating in the village. We visit them, they visit us. In Xiamen, go to restaurants together. It's of course a little strange, but at some point they think, oh, there's this white girl with his wife. And we figured out who was the closest relatives in the village after actually quite some time, and that's him. He's my cousin. Do we look similar? He was 80 something at the time, and he looks very fragile and like half my size, but he's actually twice as strong as me. I'm 100% sure. He was smoking like crazy, and because he was all his life was a farmer, right? So so here we're eating with our family. It was a good time, and this guy's actually interesting. He was born in Indonesia. His family was poor, and they went back to China. And from him I learned that Djie is K-pop, because he had visited our ancestral home, and he knew that stuff. So we've sort of clamped this situation from two ends. So if people in Indonesia have no clue what really the sources are of their rituals and symbols, etc. And the people in China have lost it, right? In the 50s they all had to destroy stuff. So over the years we've done all kinds of stuff. And in 2012 we organized a reunion there for anybody who wanted to come. Basically the concept was the people that we knew, like the Djie from Djie. So that's people in Indonesia, people in Hong Kong, China, and a lot of people from Holland, but also other places. We organized these reunions. As I showed you the first one in 1985 at our home. And this was a great theme, of course, because they want to see their myJia, and we had a whole story prepared. I did the research, and we organized this with the village, so they were very well prepared, and they really went out of their way to make it fun for us. So we had a whole day, and we had here's my brother shaking hands up with the clan leader in the village. And they had their drum bands and everything. It was great fun. And there in the left-hand corner is our clan hall. So a mix, as I said, a mix of I mean, they don't look Chinese anymore because that's my brother, so he's the same as me. And they are, so they are like a quarter Chinese, but they're still interested, right? So there's a lot missing in China, and one of the things that I did at the time, I prepared something that I have been looking for like 20 years, and it will show in a little bit. And it's a family tree that a relative, an uncle of mine, made in 1920 something. And these pictures down there, we speculate that this had something to do with his trip to China. So I speculate that he went to China to collect the information from the Tupu in China. He was on a mission, collected that information and completed it with the information in Indonesia. And there's no Tupu in China anymore. So the people in China were very interested. And I explained to them what their roots were, which is a bit bizarre, right? Here comes a white man explaining to them what their roots are. So we had good fun, drink, eat, of course. Organized puppets, which was also very nice. And mix of you know, we have like 50 people from there, 50 people from outside, and we're having lunch together. And people were really intrigued. Again, like Waikoran doing Chinese stuff. My aunt from Beijing. We're actually standing in front of the house that the first ancestor who went to Indonesia built. This one is interesting because this is inside that house, and if you look there, you see that the picture of my cousin. Remember my small cousin? He has passed away in the meanwhile, and there is an image of a Pai Wei above that, because that's the Pai Wei of the first Xu who went from China to Indonesia. We had the Pai Wei in Indonesia. They had another Pai Wei in China, but they had to destroy it. And he explained that story to me. And I said, hey, I have that Pai Wei in my computer. So I made a printout for him. And I brought it, and that was like the final proof that this Waikoran was really related, because this was exactly the same thing that they had. So apparently they made two. One they kept in Indonesia, and one they sent home, because they still felt home in two places, right? And he had kept it all this time, and he felt really heartache that he had destroyed that. When I gave that to him, he got a prominent place in their home shrine. So, friends forever. Couldn't exchange a word. Speeches, unveiling of all kind of stones and stuff. The group picture, and this group picture is in front of the ancestral home, which is basically a composite picture of old and new. And this is basically probably how it was in 1920, because this picture is part of the image that I had of the tree. And the image that I have of the tree was this. This was circulated in the family in 1990. There was an uncle who composed the family book in our family. In the process, he had lost most of the original documents because they were stolen when he was traveling on the train from Surabaya to Jakarta. He fell asleep and his suitcase was stolen. But this was a copy that was circulating, and I figured, wow, this must have all our information in there, but it's completely unreadable, right? You cannot make anything out of that. So we had this representation of a tree, but it didn't mean anything. And before that reunion in 2012, I had been asking relatives forever about this tree. Do you know where it is? Is it in the house? This K-pop house. Nobody knew. And in preparation for that reunion, I started cleaning up this thing. And in the corner, there is here in the corner, the left corner, there's more larger characters. So down there is Xu Ting Zai. So we have this book that my other relative made. So I looked up who this guy was and who's the closest relative. And I started digging in our network and through Holland and Houston, and finally ended up with information. We might have it in a box on an attic with aunts, and but maybe it's gone already because many times moved. The box might have been gone with the trash. But it was still there. So it was 9 fragments. I had another relative with a digital camera just passing through, so he sent that stuff, and I got 9 fragments, pictures of glass that I mean, Photoshop does everything. So you combine this, and you make it into a real tree. And this tree has detail. This tree has all the detail that I wanted because, for instance, this circle is my grandfather. And the whole thing goes back 24 generations. So my father would have been on that level, but he wasn't born yet. He was born in 1930. And I would be, let's say, on the level with the top balloons. And I haven't seen any tree like this. Maybe you have. But I speculate that this is sort of like an artistic combination of 2 styles, Western style and Chinese style, but he's the guy who did it. And she's the lady who had it in her attic, and she's standing in front of his grave. And the other thing is that my side of the family never knew of this side of the cemetery. So by finding this tree and digging into the tree, we found a totally different area of the cemetery where there were other relatives. Now, in Xiamen, we gave this tree to the Overseas Chinese Museum. This is a story in itself that that's too long. I'll now go to some interesting elements. This is a temple in the village. The village that I showed before is like 30 minutes from Xiamen. It's called Beimen, Shumeizun, Beimen. And this is a shrine for the temple for the whole village. And there's this stuff going on during Chinese New Year, which is a lot of fun. The airing of the temple gods. So they race around, have you seen? Race around square, and they're all drunk by that time. But on 2 sides of the temple, there is donation stones. And this is an early donation stone, which for me is interesting because it has you cannot Xu Jiang Long mentioned there, and here this is the newer one. Damn, cut off. Anyway, you at least see 2 characters. This is a donation stone from villagers who were in Java, and remember these 2 names. This is Xu or something. You will see this in this tree. Circled up there. That's actually the one that character that was missing. Qiu, and down here is Jianglong, and in the middle is my ancestor who went to Indonesia, and there's this story because I know from stories from family in the village that Jiang Bing and Jiang Long together went to Indonesia, but Jiang Long went back, and there's stories that he took money from both him and his brother to build a house. And that house is there. It's a very nice house. So for me, interesting points are that there were many Xu. I mean, if you had a chance to look at that donation stuff, there were actually many Xu, but many families from that village that donated in Java that donated to the shrine. But we only know our branch. So where did the others go? So at that time there was apparently a substantial community. Another interesting point for me is that the first Xu who arrived in this village, Beimen, we know where they come from, because actually in the village they know where they come from. So we visited that village as well. And we found out, we know roughly when it was, and tried to reconstruct the situation, why they came there, and the whole story of Beimen. The village itself, Shimei, was full, or they were unwelcome, so they had to start Beimen. Now, did the other families in Beimen arrive at the same time? Did they arrive? Were they from the same village as our ancestors, which is called Shanmei? And one thing that could suggest that is because that shrine, that temple that I just showed you, is called Shanmei Temple. So there's a lot of, for me, interesting questions there. And there were two brothers. Let me see. I won't go in depth here. There's been ongoing contact between China and Indonesia that was broke off during the Cultural Revolution, which was quite amazing for me because it had been going on for a long time, and there was exchange of letters that I found in the village in Bahasa a lot. One of these stories is that they had to burn their paiwei and their tupu and everything, but some tried to hide it and they dug holes and put it in the ground. Now, this village is next to the river, and the river had flooding, so that was gone after a few seasons, which is a pity. In the late 90s, late 90s, the government let the clans buy back their family halls. For me, interesting. The family never asked for money. That's this. When overseas Chinese go to their laojia in China, they're always afraid that people will ask for money. They don't. I mean, not in our case. They've suggested some investments, but and this village will be not there anymore in just a few years because it's part of a big program. Okay, this is one thing. Now, going into Indonesia, which is and related to graves. This guy is a guy who is repairing graves in the graveyard of our family, and we hired him to repair the grave of my great-grandmother. And I don't think this is a traditional style either. I mean, you can see I think you can see the completed renovation later. So here you see them do their thing. Okay, here's some other graves. There's many. Here's a line. I heard something said about a line, so here's the line. It was interesting that you mentioned the situation in the graveyard, because it's the graveyard is for the dead, but actually it's alive, right? There is all kind of stuff going on. There's prostitution going on, there's gambling going on. This is a shady area, and here, directly next to, actually on top of our graves, there's people living, they have their warung, they do their thing. And, but we also contract some of them to take care of the graves. And in the process of repairing our grave, I would come every day. And one day was really late, so it was already dark. And we could see that there was village life on top of the graves. So these people, it's hot, right, in Indonesia, so they go out to air and they just enjoy the stars. So family life in life and death. Here they're repairing the grave of my great grandfather. So here it's almost completed. And there I got this idea, which actually fits with what's going on in these talks, to work with the repairman of. There are several firms that take care of this graveyard. This is not so big. I mean, my guess is that there's like 1,000, 1,200 graves, and my idea was, because it actually worked out well working with these people, even though they hardly spoke English, to ask them to take pictures of each and every grave. So our instructions was not as elaborate as yours, but we figured out, okay, you have to have an overview picture and you have to have a close-up picture, because for me it was important the idea was to make a website with all this information, to digitize, to transcribe all the information on the tombstones, to make it searchable, so that relatives could find their ancestors, and no matter where they were, they could have keep contact with those graves. And the incentive for this repair guy, to do this was like, okay, we have this website, and you take the pictures. Yes, it's hot, so 1 day, 2 days, sweaty, but in return we put this stuff online and we advertise your services. So if there is a tomb that needs repair, they can contact you. We get a commission, because I also want to be paid for the work. But we have a database. We have something that's really valuable for descendants. It's great as a database. It's very interesting, because we are looking for all kind of relatives ourselves, but I'm sure others are as well. And if this works, you could do this in other parts of Indonesia as well. You could basically work together with these repair people to get this information. So I split up the whole map in quadrants, and the idea was that they would make a picture with the number, and mark the number, I mean, in the absence of GPS. Okay, that's roughly the working model. Grave repairman photographs. We put the information on the platform with some features. Relatives want to have the grave repaired. He gets business. We take a cut. Everybody. So I started with this reconnecting 22 million Shu. What my dream is, and I've been doing this for. I started with the Dutch boy who had no clue that he had anything different than other Dutch boys or girls, and thinking that I was the only one with this funny sounding name that nobody could pronounce. Where in fact I'm part of a huge group of people, 22 million, which was a discovery for me. So I'm sort of obsessed with this idea of the ability to connect with all of them. Of course, that's like unthinkable. Nobody does that And the idea is not just at random connect everybody, but to go back village by village and trace back. So this Beimen is our ancestral village. We've been to Shanmei, Anxi. We know from Anxi we should go to Fujian. So this is like a string of pearls that will lead to our mythical place from origin around 3,500 years ago. So my logic is, if I keep on doing this, these villages they keep, it's not so difficult to remember where you come from, right? So you just tell that to your sons or to your grandsons, and that will just continue. It's not like all of a sudden that people will forget that. So my bet is that if you go from village to village to village to village to village, you can actually do that. And if you set up this system, as a genealogy system, then you are actually, people are able to connect to this string of pearls to go out, and it becomes a network. So that's my idea, and I've done a little bit of that because I've made, there's these two dots. The other one, there's Beimen and Tianmei. Tianmei, there were two brothers, and one went to Beimen, which is my ancestor, and his brother went to Tianmei. And from Tianmei, 300 years ago, there was one guy who went to Melaka in Malaysia. And since 2009, I've tried to contact them, but they are very well off, and they sort of keep everybody away because they have a very prominent family house, Melaka, the Djie. Djie.
I know the Djie.
You know them? Okay, so.
And they have relatives in Singapore as well.
Yes. Yeah,
They have a big temple in Singapore.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. The Heren is the building.
Yes.
So yeah, they're this Atlas water company, ice company.
Now you have the Singapore section.
They have an ancestor in Bukit Brown that was just assumed.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So we should talk more. So that's the idea, and so I'm connecting. So this is Shanmei. We're connecting, going back, and we're going in the other direction. This is Malacca.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So here I was still standing in front of the gate. It's closed. It's really difficult to get in, and they've kept me out for like 5 years. But I had this family tree on my iPad, and it shows a distinct branch going in their direction. And I had their tubu because they left that in China.
I have the temple magazine that has all the photographs of
Yeah. But finally I got in. So oh, the one in Singapore. Oh, very interesting. So now we're doing research together. So the door opened, right? We're doing research together. I was there a week ago, and the group picture, which is always great. So he's another interesting guy. He's a leader of the Puranicans in Australia, but he's my counterpart on their end. So we're doing research together, and. There's a Peranakan museum in Malacca.
His name is spelled C-H-I, right?
C-H-I, yes. So along the way they misspelled it.
Whereas the others are C-H-E-E.
You know him?
I think
Alfred.
Yeah, I've had dinner with him before.
Oh, really? Oh, you must know Peter Lee in Singapore. There's a guy. Yeah. So they helped him find their stuff in China. So. And people are excited about this. This is in China. They all want to know what's going on, and this is here in Malacca. And they're all. I'm doing the same as basically I'm doing to you, showing my pictures to them, which is great fun. So next year we're going to have a reunion together, a reunion going back 24 generations. This is really funny. So this is the project, going back in all kind of directions, making networks with the ultimate goal to connect 22 million Xinxu. So I want to do something with a tree because it's a special tree. It's a beautiful tree. So we're going to put that online at some point. Our clan is really badly organized, so we need to put a clan organization in place. And once we do make a clan organization template, we might as well do it for other people. So we want to make this sort of an easy access easy, instant way for people to have a clan organization online. So when I go into China, I say, hey, you can get going right away. I'll teach you how to do this. And boom, you put your pictures on there. We should see how that works with other stuff. And have different templates, this and that.
Great.
Right? So, and of course, fun things is visualization of a tree. So this is what I did for this reunion. And ultimately, like visualization in a nicer way, but of where, from one village where you go. Of course, that's in my terms has to be crowdsourcing, but I hear another term for basically the same thing. Guaranteed for 100 years, and this is sort of a rough overview. You have the past and data and information from the past, and then you have the now, and then you have the future. The future is interesting, and the past is connecting people, and to the past is connecting everybody, and ultimately you're connecting them to the past. So it can be a social network, social media, but this is in China, so you have to be careful. So as it is restricted, very restricted, you can use traditional ways of communicating in a clan. You just don't, as a kid of 8, you just don't talk to the clan leader, ask your father, blah, blah, blah. Now, these are great structures to put in place in such a platform as well. So the idea is, I mean, I'm from Holland, we have 16 million people, and we have a museum, we have a huge library about our history and culture, and my name is 22 million, and there's hardly anything. It's worth doing. And of course, we're just one of the hundreds of names, and so everybody could do this. It's just a different way of looking at reality, identity for overseas Chinese, and also for the people in China, because they're all going out of the villages into the city, and they're breaking off their ties with their social fabric as well. So, in my experience, the Han sphere is the whole world.
Great.
That's it.
Beautiful.
Because you're all tired, you want to go home and get food. Or is there any question?
One or two remarks. One is that just in front of Academia Sinica there is a graveyard, and there's a Japanese column, and there's buried a Mr. Xu. So you might go there tomorrow, we might go there. And then there is this census, Taiwan census of 1956, which Yuan and me digitized, so that you can see how many shoes have been in which xiang of the 360 xiang of Taiwan, how many have been there. And they've been classified as Hono, Hakka, indigenous, or Waishengren.
Cool. Is there any shoe organization here in Taiwan? Must be, right? I located one, but it is empty. It's didn't open. So my work is a little bit from the inside, right? You guys are looking from the outside, and I'm also not restricted to observing. I'm an actor. I'm a creator. So and I'm also, that's my job, right? I'm like, we're now putting together this clan organization, which is not, it's not going to be traditional, right? It's going to be a mix. So that's, I think, is the next stage for a number of people.
So did you find that once you reconnected with all of your Chinese roots, do you incorporate traditional Chinese behavior in your life more, or do you consider yourself to be more or less Western Dutch?
That's a difficult question. What happened during the first trip was in 1986. I was really Dutch, and I've offended really a lot of my family members. Like, when you're Dutch, I mean, at least at that time, Indonesia was dirty. So I dressed as dirty as possible to, to take the public bus and this and that. And then I arrived at my uncle's place, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is a family member." So over time, like I became aware of the sensitivities, and that for sure. And of course, it just happens. These people are so inviting. You're not going to offend them. Number one. So you take over habits, you take over, respectful ways of dressing people, and there's so much time passed. I mean, I'm married to a Taiwanese lady, so it's unavoidable. I cannot be a Dutch person. Dutch are kind of blunt,
Well, you're pretty blunt right there.
So tell me about myself. Yeah, so that's there's really a mix.
Yeah.
So yes.
And what is your relation with your Tonghua?
The Tanghao was the Donghai reference.
It's Donghai reference because on one picture you got a Longxi also.
Well, Longxi is actually the district, so it's now Longhai. It was changed from Longxi to Longhai to Zhangzhou, so that's why we had difficulty finding it. But the Qi Guan is the Xibei, but that was really, we found out later, it was really a small part of the village. So we asked, first we found out this K-box thing, so we knew, oh wow, this is significant. So we went back to the village and we asked people, what's this Xibei about? Because they also use this in a village in China. And they said, well, this is a part of the village. See, here's the Xi, so here's the river, and this part is Xibei. Okay, so we figured it out. But Longxi is just going more general. It's like, okay, this is the area, and Xibei is here. But there's always a reference to Donghai.
Dragon River? That's not the town hall. Longxi is Yiguan. Longxi is town hall.
No, it's the Shen, actually what you would call the Shen, I guess, now.
She is the county.
County, yeah.
Longxi is the county. Longxi is the town hall.
Tanghao in my family is Donghai, which goes all the way back to area Suzhou, right, Jiangsu.
Where the family name originated from.
Yes. So yesterday I heard it was maybe fabricated by the Kuomintang. It's everywhere in China. Every Xu refers to Donghai everywhere you go. So I've been told that there is a tupu in Putian that goes back 100 generations. So that will give me some guideline how to get back to Donghai. So I want to check. And one of the things I'm really interested in, because it's sort of like an onion, right? You peel. And I want to know whether there's a different mentality, because the people who go out are more entrepreneurial, more adventurous, or they were more poor, you don't know. So I'm curious, like the people who are in Donghai, what kind of mentality they have. If I compare that to the people in Indonesia before, for instance. Anyway, this should be. I'm quite serious about this project in itself, and the way that I want to do it is make it into a business. Because if it's interesting for our family and it works, then it's interesting for other families. And the way that I want to launch this is to physically go from a village to village, and to have people documenting that, make a CCTV or a National Geographic or both, documenting that stuff. And the end result people can see. So if we can do this with a shoe, and I figured out how to really make this attractive, not just for scholars, but for people in the village, and that they can really use this and they really think it's meaningful and cool. So we're adding a lot of features. Then, you know, if you market this also through the documentaries, other families will use this. So that's the idea. That's basically the business behind it. So as a business person, I believe in sustainability and profit. not in subsidies necessarily.
Sustainable.
Yeah. So that's maybe a difficult discussion in this context.
No, it's a mission.
Yeah, my wife has a double feeling about this. First, she doesn't want to go to graveyards because, that's why I keep on asking, why are you going to graveyards? Second, she doesn't like family because it's mafia. And so when she married me, she thought, yes, she knew that I was half Chinese, but she thought I was mostly a white boy. And then we went to Indonesia or to China, and oh my God. So I told her I will really pursue this hard because I've been talking about this for years. And then, okay, whatever happens, but I have to get this out of my system. So it's either going to be a success or a total failure, I don't care, as long as I get it out of my system. That's it.
I don't think you're going to ever get it out of your system.
Don't tell my wife, please.